Good morning everyone who's joining. A very good morning from Mount Stewart. Spring is well and truly in the air. Look at that gorgeous sun today. So usual couple of minutes, just getting set up here while everyone joins. Let us know where you're watching from. Shout outs to all our regulars. What have you been seeing in your gardens lately? Do let me know. Always interesting to find out what people have been seeing wildlife wise. Obviously with us having been open for quite a while now, what have you been seeing when you've been here at Mount Stewart, if you have been? Always good to know. Just sat here on this mossy bank here at the Glen, absolutely beautiful area here. All the celandines are just starting to come out into flower, some of the first spring flowers. Beautiful. It's good to see everyone joining as usual. Morning, Helen. I do like the Glen woodlands. It's one of those real idyllic landscape beach woodlands. See the beach still yet to come into leaf. You get this gorgeous carpets of crunchy leaves and thick mosses and ferns, especially here at the stream. Alright, I think we're ready to get going. So, good morning everyone. If you're new to the live streams, my name's Toby. I'm the area ranger here at Mount Stewart. I've got the wind microphone in today again. It's a bit breezy. I was hoping that we could do without it so we could hear all of the woodland sounds. So if the wind does die down, I'll take the microphone off so that you can hear the bird song here right now is absolutely beautiful. And of course you've got the trickling sound of the water. See if I can get a bit of that. Lovely sound. So we're back to where it all began. So pretty much a year ago this week, the first lockdown happened. We closed, and I found myself as an area ranger, and our role being, well, a good half of our role is about connecting people with the outdoors, and you know, half of that went overnight when we closed and we weren't able to welcome you all here. So this is how Mount Stewart Moments started, is a way to bring Mount Stewart to you all at home, and it's continued. You've all found it very useful and interesting. A really good chance for us to talk about a bit more in depth about some of the history of the site, but also about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how our work takes place. So as always, I really value your questions. It helps steer the conversation depending on what the theme is. But you know, everything's on the table within reason, and usually I can answer them to a point. But you know, if I can't, I'll say, because I don't know everything by any means. So obviously we've been open for quite a long time now. So July was our first opening, and we've got visitors here. So hi. July was our first opening, and we've gradually been welcoming people back ever since. We still have our current 800 person a day cap. This is obviously required by law around our pinch points and visitor facilities and so on to maintain distancing. But obviously once you're out and about on the trails, for example, you know, it's well distanced, which is great. Yeah, and sort of just before I started this, I was just reflecting on the year. You know, we've been all over the estate near enough where we have signal to be able to do these live streams, and where I haven't had signal, I've been able to bring you the weekly video moments. Some of them have been edited together, some of them are just little snippets looking at what we've been doing, and it's really heartening to see the interest that everyone has had in, like, actually the nitty-gritty of what we're doing. So yeah, it's great, and I'll bend anyone's ear who's listening. So thank you for joining us on the live streams and commenting and obviously asking questions, which I really value it. And like I say, it stops me having to talk just about things off the top of my head all the time. So I thought today, like I say, we're back at the Glen Woodlands where it all began, and sort of the first time I did the live stream here, it was like a very much a test version, literally with the phone in my hand, really shaky, not particularly great footage, and I know, you know, just when we started. So I thought we'd go back and actually have a look at the area again, one with sort of fresh eyes, and talk about some of the bits we talked about before, so it might be familiar to some of you, but also sort of picking things up over the last 12 months of what's been happening. And yeah, you know, we're at that cusp of spring, really in the air. It feels beautifully warm down here today. And like I said, the celandines are coming out, primroses are well out about everywhere, and I can see all of the wood sorrel starting to come up as well, so we'll take a little closer look at that. So I'm going to quickly jump across the stream here and we'll have a look at a few little interesting sites where the wood sorrel is well developed, and directly linked to the old scout camp that used to be here as well. I'm pretty sure when I've mentioned the scout camp before, I'm sure someone's been watching and was actually one of those scouts back in the day. So if you are watching, let me know, and we'll go have a look. So I'll flip the camera around here and we'll just go have a cheeky look on this badger trail here, and I'll pick up some of your questions. So, okay, so yeah, good morning Elaine, morning Astrid. Can't believe it's been a year since we started these. I know, it's gone like mad fast, and I suppose it just shows time really flies, does, when you're having fun. I guess I'm having fun. Good morning Joyce, good morning Mavis, good morning Liz. Are you visiting later on today? Well, it's certainly the day for it. It's absolutely beautiful here, and yeah, obviously we've got the bulk of our trails are open. We've still got the green trail just at the top of the Glen. It's closed at the top there. I'm hoping to have that reopened mid-April, all being well. You'll hear a little bit more about that when we sort of carry on chatting in a little moment. What else we got? Good morning Catherine. Morning Derek. Where are you? Haven't seen that stream before. We're out in the Glen woodlands, so this is part of the blue and green trails, and you'll see a little bit more of it down here. So we'll head down around to where the old folly is. We just redressed that area. It's where we've got our little forest bathing benches, and a beautiful little summer glade that was the project of Jasper last year, our academy ranger, to open that area up, redress it, and basically manage that area as a woodland glade. And the foliage that's going to come up there this year is going to be absolutely beautiful, and it's going to be heaving with insects, I can guarantee it. So if it's the place you want to sit and have butterflies flapping around you, that's going to be the place to go this year, definitely. So yeah, head on down there Derek, it's well worth checking out. It's a beautiful bit of woodland. Morning Charmaine. Didn't think we'd be here a year on. Yes, yeah, you know, it's an interesting thing to reflect on. I would say that 2020 was the opening ribbon for everything that is going to come. This isn't an isolated case. It's going to keep happening, these sorts of things, along with all of the other challenges we face around the climate change, which is here, it is happening. But all is not lost. The solutions are there. We've just got to do it and embrace it. It may feel fruitless, but the reality is that we can make a difference. So yeah, anyway, back round. So I'm just walking down through what was an area that was used as the old scout camp. I think it was in the 70s, maybe into the late 80s. The area had a whole sequence of little stone cooking troughs and things like that done, and little charcoal burners, and this is one of them actually, just here. What's left of it. They've even left a little wheelbarrow as well. And what I love about this little wheelbarrow is they're only just starting to come up, but this beautiful wood sorrel here, it's part of the oxalis family, so it's a wild variety. They have lovely little white flowers, similar to wood anemone. So during the day, these like shamrock-like leaflets open out, and then at night they fold up, and you sort of kind of see them sink down. You can see the fold down the middle there. Beautiful. These carpet this whole area. So if I just quickly look around here, they're all just starting to come up, and you see the beautiful lime green of the wood sorrel. Cracking little shade-loving woodland plants. And yeah, it sort of grows all over the stonework and in the leaf litter. And you've got some of these old little cooking cairns from the scout camp when it used to be here. There's a big long bench. I think this was the central cooking area, and there's the main bench just there. And then dotted through this section of woodland, we'll find a few more of these little stone cairns. Some of them we've taken away because they were like concrete plinths, but where the kind of ivy has already grown over them, and it kind of makes a little sort of raised sort of hidey hole platform. I found wrens nesting in the little hollows behind them before, which is quite nice. Yeah, they're dotted around all over the place. I'll just pick up. So, good morning, Bernie. Good morning, Martin. Good morning, Susie. Beautiful day. You'll be down there this afternoon as well? Yes. Walking the gardens, yeah, of course, always walking the gardens. Do take a bit more of an explore around some of the wider trails. Spring is really coming out in the woodlands. Definitely recommend, even if a quick loop around the Ploughman's Hill loop. Beautiful through there, especially in the glades. All of the foliage is starting to come back up. Let's see if I can get myself a booter here. Jeez. Okay. So yeah, back in the day, when the scout camp was here, there was actually a little bridge across this area. You can see where the plinth, the stonework, and the panels were off just here. It was in a less than sorry state, as you'd imagine, when we got it, having been sort of there unused for 30 odd years. We took it away, unfortunately, but we do have obviously the main route through the Glen that we restored. 2017, I think it was. Yeah, so this is probably one of the areas of the wider domain that has, I don't want to say formal, but certainly has a bit more of a very clear landscape feel about it, and that's because it is. So you have the Glen Burn here, which is the stream I'm walking along. It runs from the very northeast corner of the estate right the way around the eastern side, and then passes into the estate on the southern corner, just up at the floating bridge, we call it, and comes on through the estate here. It's the same stream you see just down below the temple, and passes out onto Anne's Point and then sluices out into the loch. It's a stream, as an end user, we can actually do quite a lot of interventions along here. Now, regular watchers will have seen me talking about leaky dams and slowing the flow and things like that, and helping to oxygenate the water. So the stream, although it's a small catchment, it does come into us with a few sort of nitrogen overloading issues. It can be it's quite still and slow flowing before it gets to us, and then it picks up a bit of speed here, and it's a chance for us to be able to sort of speed up certain areas, create a bit of movement in the water to help oxygenate it, and this will help obviously all the small invertebrates and larvae in the water themselves, which then become food for all of the other things. So we do get fish up through here, and the herons and the egrets come and fish in the stream here as well. And the other element of this is all of those larvae, a lot of them will hatch out into airborne flies. So you've got mayflies, for example, and so on, and they become food for the likes of our migratory bird species like swallows, house martins and so on, who'll be feeding all of those, and those big fly booms we get in that first kind of flush of sort of mid-spring fly emergence. So as annoying as all those mozzies and gnats and other flies are, and if anyone lives near Loch Ney, they'll know the Loch Ney fly can come out in its swarms to the point that it is almost black in the sky. They're so dense. That's all the food for all of those birds, and they specifically migrate round the northern hemisphere to capture this big boom in life. And I'm very much looking forward to the return of the swallows. It's another one of those tipping points, indicators of spring when the swallows arrive, and I have seen a few around. None of the ones that actually breed here at Mount Stewart have arrived yet, but it was April the 11th last year, the first of the swallows that breed at Mount Stewart arrived, so I'm expecting them in the next few weeks. They might come a little earlier with some of the winds we've had, but if we get a sequence of northerly winds again, they'll probably just be suppressed back a little bit, and that happened last year, which is why they came a little later. So it's a lovely day to sort of be out here today, and anyone who's visiting today is like, you're going to absolutely love it. Everything's just got that freshness about it. There's just that fresh green on the growth. You've got new growth. The bluebells. Oh, look at that bank. That's all bluebells starting to come up, all the way up the bank there. I'd say we're still on target for the usual sort of second week of May, third week of May is usually when the bluebells here reach their kind of peak. But we always get quite a few sunny glades here and there that they come out a little earlier. But yeah, Really looking forward to bluebells coming out. And of course last year we were closed when that happened, and I spent a whole live stream just on bluebells because it was so beautiful, and obviously the spring bird song as well. So yeah, it's a beautiful little area here. Just strolling down to the Folly Glade here, and we'll have a chat about that. Let's pick up a few more of your questions. Morning Brian. Good morning David. Any idea when the squirrel hide will open again? As soon as the restrictions around indoor spaces is amended by the NI executive, we'll be able to open the squirrel hide again. So I would imagine it's currently looking at mid-April, I think it is. As soon as they change, it'll be open. Kind of that little period just before Christmas, we were able to open it under the kind of like one bubble at a time. It'll probably have to reopen under those kind of criteria, but all being well, yeah, so mid-April. So I think everything's going to start coming together a little bit around mid-April. We'll be able to get some of the trails reopened, having had a rest, and we've done some repair work. And of course things like some of our buildings, reception areas, like the tea room and things like that. But it all sways on obviously the government guidelines and instructions around COVID. So yeah, so they're still there, don't worry. I've been keeping an eye on them, so we've done a couple of live streams from the hide. Just on red squirrels in general, the females will now be probably about a month or so into their pregnancy, so I'm starting to already see less of the females around. They tend to sort of start to be very purposeful about what they're doing. They just go out to get a bit of food, and they're kind of just chilling most of the time. And we'll start to see kits being born probably around mid-April-ish, and then we start to see kits actually coming out towards the end of May. Might be a little earlier this year, just with it being such a warm, mild spring. They definitely started earlier breeding wise, so yeah. So just heading up for here. Good morning Anne. What a great day for the live stream. It is absolutely beautiful. The light here today is actually in some cases a bit too bright. It washes out the camera. So yeah, there we go. Andrew McCracken says, one of the former leaders of my kids' scout group was telling me recently about the camping there. Yeah, so there you go. We still, well, obviously pre-COVID, we still do have scout groups staying on the estate. It's not here at the Glen in particular, but we have two new sort of designated areas that the scouts will stay at. So yeah, it's a tradition that continues. Okay, so good morning Laura. Good morning Hazel. Morning Lee. I'm very lucky to see a red squirrel beside the hide, bounce across the path. Less people, more chance to see them. Yeah, I mean, you raised a really good point, Lee. I mentioned this before in some of our videos and live streams, is that although we've got the booking system in place, I know it doesn't work for everybody. There's an element of inflexibility about it, but it does mean that we don't have any of those days where there's thousands of people on the estate anymore, and as a result everyone gets a better visitor experience out of it. So it really spreads the loading, and yeah, you can always find a quiet space, just like here. I'm here in the Glen. I've only seen 2 people today so far. It's absolutely beautiful. Yeah. Morning Marie. Good morning Kimberly. So yeah, I've just strolled up the pathway up to the Folly. I know we don't have any interpretation up here, mainly because there's not a big story to tell, but it's I can sort of tell it while it's here. So it's one of the first buildings that you sort of see out in the wider domain, outside of the original planting house and the farmyard when it was first built, and it was built as pretty much a picnicking or banqueting cottage, folly or house. So it wasn't a folly in the sense of a fortified, hillstead, but because it does sit on a hill in a prominent landscape, it's kind of get nicknamed the Folly. So you can see here, and right up the top of this glade, really nice view, and you can imagine the then family would have obviously sent ahead to their house staff to head out down to the Folly with some tea, biscuits, scones, snacks, or high tea, and they would have trotted out on the horses and stopped off here for a little break. and originally it would have been roofed. So the various sequencing of maps, if you can actually see this online actually. If you go to Peroni, so it's the all the historic mapping system that we have in Northern Ireland for the Ordnance Survey. So yeah, PRONI. It's .com or .gov.uk or something like that, but if you just search Peroni, you can go back through all of the old mapping, right the way back to, I think it's 17 something, and see like anywhere in Northern Ireland what was there. You know, I've been looking around all sorts of places, and you see there's lots of windmills around. Don't see very many windmills anymore. And this particular area here at the Glen, and this building, the Folly, it shows it originally as a single room structure, which is the one I'm in right now. So just swap the camera around. So this particular one single structure here, there's the edge wall. You can see it was actually built out. Now this was shown as a roofed building originally. It's in like, kind of like a semi-Gothica style. See the slightly pointed archways. It was then built out with a second courtyard. So the area I'm standing in now was walled, but didn't have a roof. And you can actually trace this back. You look at the layers of the building here, and you can see how it almost had like a Georgian push-out, like a window push-out on the edge front edge, which was a later addition, as like a framed courtyard with the archways. There's the far corner, and then coming back in again to the main original structure. And then I think it's the mid 1800s, no, so the mid, yeah, it was like 1850-ish or something like that. It then loses its roof, and it pretty much seems to have then been left to, you know, the elements after that point. But you can still see where there's some of the original lime render on what was an interior building. So even without looking at any of that mapping, you can piece together the history of a building by looking at the layering of sort of changes to the structure and so on. So we know that this was an inside building, even without looking at maps showing that it had a roof, because it had an internal render. And then if you look at this, the stonework, you know, even if looking at the front, but looking down the side of it, see it's a lot rougher finish. There's lots of divots, especially here you can see the divots in the stonework. Whereas if you look in the courtyard area, the finish on the wall it's all been properly pointed right up to the very edge of the stone. It's a lot smoother finish. So we know that this was never rendered, and it was finished to be an outside courtyard wall, bare stone. And yep, the inside wall, as you can see, a lot rougher, and that would have been covered with a render. So there's little things you can look at to sort of start to piece together what a building was, even without looking at maps. And yeah, it was, like I say, a little picnic house, but it's also part of the designed landscape here. So a lot of the regulars will have heard me talk about Mount Stewart, the domain of Mount Stewart. Its layout is designed, and it's linked to the Ulster architect William King. He worked on other properties that we look after, like Castle Cool and Downhill up on the north coast. And his style was about these vistas and views. So it's why when you go around Mount Stewart, you have these big solid blocks of woodland, and the rides and the trails and the paths that we have and we've restored, these are all original routes. They kiss the woodlands at the edges of them. So as you're going through the woodlands, you know, they're all on a slow curve. And it's why the estate feels bigger than it actually is. So you've got, you know, quite dense woodland, passing through, you know, big canopy beech trees where we still have some of the original woodland. And of course, you know, you lose your orientation a little bit. You don't quite realise how far you've been, and then it kisses the edge of the woodland and opens out into one of these big vistas. And you know, you can even see it just through the woodlands here behind me, looking onto Bell's Hill and Bell's Tank. You know, it opens out to a big wide landscape, and this drumlin landscape is what William King adopted in his design. He was very much a designer that focused on working with the landscape around him and the area he was working on, whereas the likes of Capability Brown, for example, which probably a lot of people will be familiar with, his approach to landscape design was like he had the idea in his head and he changed everything to make it fit. You know, we're talking like really heavy earthworkings he would do. And it's quite an interesting difference. You know, so William King worked on this landscape scale with his approach, but he worked with the landscape, which is it's kind of a, you know, from our spirit of place, you know, we work with the landscape and what it's doing here, and so on, and that spirit continues. So, so back to the folly, and the context of the folly. So, whilst we're stood on this sort of outcropping here, and there was actually a quarry just round behind us here, where a lot of the stone was taken, one to build this particular building, but also build some of the estate walls, and to landscape the stream. So, like I say, the Glen Burn, it's a landscape stream. Its original course pretty much passed out through this sort of half cut through the Glen kind of valley in Drumlins here, and from the end of the Glen it would actually go out into salt marsh, not brackish marsh. So from here all the way down, it's now a walled stream right the way down to the loch. So it's no longer part of its natural course, but it obviously, you know, we think it's its natural course now. But there's a lot of history there with just how those things were changed. So that's probably the heaviest amount of engineering that William King did in his designs to sort of make this structure work. And as a result, what you have is, you know, up here looking down onto the Glen here, you've got this beautiful glade which we've restored. You know, this was all blocked up. So we've opened the understory up here, which will benefit all of the insects because of all the flora and warmth that we have down here. And you've got the stream trickling through to the beautiful little stone bridge, obviously just down at the end there, which we'll have a closer look at in a second, because that's absolutely covered in all sorts of cool mosses and lichen as well. But interesting enough, it wasn't actually just about the view out, it was actually the view into the folly. So if I'm stood here, the folly's here, actually just in front of me here, but I'm looking out here through the back of the proverbial Glen Valley. Now right over there is a new hill where the natural play is. So anyone who's familiar with, just as you're coming up to the entrance to natural play, you've got some beautiful big old beech trees that open out looking actually onto the Glen, and that again this vista looking through the Drumlin landscape, and that would have originally been a designed view that looked onto the folly, and the folly here would have then been framed by the woodland around it. And that was a designed landscape view. Now that's obviously been lost with the sort of more of the tree stock growing up around it, but it's one of the reasons why I tasked Jasper, our Academy Ranger, with the job of opening up this immediate area around the Glen here and the folly, and this sort of first vista. It's just a nod to what it was, because we don't really need to be cutting down all the trees just for the sake of one little view. You know, we can give it an idea of what it is. And do you know what? Glades are fantastic. You've got to love a good old glade. So yeah, and of course, you know, plonk a couple of our little timber benches there, and people can enjoy the area. Yeah, it's I really love this area because of the mature beech trees. You know, although their days are numbered, and we're really working hard on hopefully we can get some natural regeneration working up. But you get these areas like this here where you've got these lovely knobbly roots coming out of the buttresses of the trees here. So this is a buttress here. Actually got a little bit of Ganoderma fungus bracket just showing at the bottom. So again, you know, this particular beech trees, its days are numbered, with the decay starting in of it, and they're all very tall and thin here, because they haven't had any active harvesting over the years, and we're actually getting like a domino effect coming through the woodland here. So you can see this clearing just up in front of me here. I'll just go around to the bottom, you can see it more. Once those trees that are on the edge of the woodland fail, and you don't have a diverse age structure within the woodland, you know, they're all the same age, they're very tall, they're all kind of, you know, at the tail end of their life, and winds, you end up getting sort of wind tunnels that come through these breakout areas within the woodland, and it just sort of blows out a lot of the trees within that area. So you can actually really see the gap just there, and it's basically been sort of dominoes. Every storm comes through, we lose a couple more trees, like kind of right the way into the centre of the woodland. So it's really important that we really encourage natural regeneration. Actually, you know, our end goal is obviously once this bit of woodland comes back in hand, it's currently leased to Forestry Service, we want to make sure that we're doing some active harvesting in here to break up the age structure so that we don't lose them all in one go. And part of that was starting this glade recreation just here, which we did with their permission under their lease. and of course there's a bit of tree safety management to go with it as well. And I say some of the trees have been turned into the wee little forest bathing benches, and it's a beautiful little site to just lay down and soak up the sounds and do a bit of mindfulness if you like that sort of thing and all the stuff. A few of the stumps and the trees that we have left, like these two little ones here, these are actually elms. Not very many elms left on the estate, but they're certainly regenerating, and hopefully you know, they'll mature up and not succumb to the Dutch elm's disease. And you know, you've heard me talk about ash dieback. It's, yeah, we're just going to completely lose ash from our landscape, and I'll probably just go down and actually have a look at one of my favourite ash trees, which is just at the head of the Glen at the second bridge here, to finish up. But, yeah, it's going to be devastating to our landscape. Now, I thought I'm going to pick up some of your questions in a minute, so if you've got any questions, do pop them in the comments there and I'll pick them up. But I get asked this quite a lot, and especially before we did what we've done here with these two little half rounds covering them up. There used to be a little fence enclosure here, and you see there's a few of these around the estate with these little red capped tubes in them. You can just sort of see the other one in there. Now, these are a whole sequence of boreholes around the estate, and they go really, really deep down into the aquifer in this area, and it's part of a long-term study that I think it's Marine Agency and Rivers Agency and NIEA, it's mostly NIEA, are doing, looking at nitrate levels within groundwater and aquifers. So the aquifer that we're on here actually stretches all the way across to Scotland. But of course, you know, if anyone's familiar with how hydrology works, so aquifers are the groundwater. It can take decades, even hundreds of years, for water to pass down into these aquifers. And these are the ones that quite a lot of wells will be plumbing into to get their water from. And what they're looking at, these nitrate levels in these aquifers are being regularly tested once a year to see what what's actually happening. And we're starting to see now a rise in nitrogen, nitrate and nitrite levels in these aquifers, and this is basically a direct result of the amount of over application of artificial fertilizers and slurries on our land, to the point that it's actually working its way into our aquifer systems now, let alone our river systems, which are not in a great condition, believe me. So that's kind of quite concerning that, you know, they're starting to see this rise. Now, the extent of that we don't know yet, but we won't know for probably another 10 years because of the length of time it takes for water to pass into these areas. So that's what those little tubes are for, which is quite interesting. I get a lot of questions about that one. So, pick up a few of your questions here. Let's see. So, Alexandra says, sneaking a wee peek between Zoom classes. You actually visited this day last year, and then the world shut down. Yes, it did, didn't it? It was this week. I think it was like the 22nd or the 24th or something like that. I think the official lockdown started, and we closed that week. We attempted to sort of open our doors, you know, having already a lot of areas been shut down, but we got a little overwhelmed, and obviously everything happened as well. Good intentions, but didn't quite work out. Yeah, it was absolute madness. Morning, Sarah. It is a beautiful day. Good morning, Glen. David asks, just put it on a dark patch so I can read it. What kind of wildlife would be around this area and along the stream? Well, we kind of get everything and everything here. So red squirrels, obviously, some of the larger mammals that are here, obviously badgers. There's a badger set just up the corner there. Foxes pass through, of course. Pine martens passing through. So drilling down into the smaller wildlife. Now that we've started working on restoring these glades here, we're getting a better sort of spread of the insects coming back through, because we're getting that light back into the ground level, and the right flora is coming up. So this is a really good patch for speckled wood butterflies and orange tips. Quite like this area for breeding in, and all the usual other various white species. So your small whites, large whites, and what else comes here? You usually see the tortoiseshells. They tend to roost in some of the stuff here as well. And then as it comes for moths, so large mature woodland like this hosts a lot of the woodland species, like the dark chestnut, a lot of the drabs are here, some of the other kind of the browns, the oranges and the red coloured moss species, because of the leaf litter, they blend in here. Get all sorts of them, because we have a few patches of really nice rosebay willow herb. That's the food plant for the elephant hawk moth, which is that kind of luminous green and pink moth that usually gets, whenever someone sort of says moths are cool, they usually show the elephant hawk moth, because it's quite a cool moth. But there's loads of other little micro species here as well. I did a couple of videos, it was around May last year. We also surveyed this area for bat roosts, a couple of different species. We survey the area, the stream, for Dorbenton's bats, which are a species that feed over water. We're always keeping an eye out. The bridges here, so the bridges here themselves, they're quite often areas that the Dorbentons will roost in, because they usually have little cavities. So I'm always checking every year during summer for any bat activity in these ones. And then we obviously come out in the woodlands here with our bat detector, which makes their sonic calls audible, and you can tell what bat species it is by the way their audible pulses work. So pipistrelle bats, soprano and common pipistrelles, they have a slightly different frequency, but there's quite a fast-paced pulsing call. Dorbentons make a slightly slower pace call. Do have a look on our Facebook page. Just search Mount Stewart Moment bats. I did a couple of videos actually around the roost surveys around the long-eared bats at Tyn and Oak, and some of the other Liza's bats, which live in the roof of the house, and they're the ones that feed up really high, and actually got some really good footage of them flying very early on. One of the first bat species that come down, see them going sort of round and round, getting their orientation, hunting very high before all of the insects come down to the ground level for the day, and then obviously moths start coming out, which is one of their main food sources. So yeah, there's all sorts going on in the stream itself. Like I said, it's water is life. It really is one of those places where you have the bottom end of the food chain happening here. So we'll go take a little look actually. Like I say, it's quite early on in the season, so I wouldn't expect huge amounts of larvae to be out just yet, but we'll have a look here and see what we can see. So I know that we obviously have the various mollusks that live in here, and we have freshwater limpets in this stream. Obviously the usual caddis flies, and there's quite a few different species of caddis flies, little other species. We'll see, it's still a little early on. Let's see if we can find a caddisfly here, because they should just start coming out. So here we go. So we've got, these are little mayfly nymphs here. Let's see if I get the camera to pick them up here. Where are we? So just at the end of my finger, so I can just about make that out. So it's a little mayfly nymph just on the edge of the rock there. And this one here, I can't remember the name. It's a species of water louse. You just see it here. So these are ones that actually permanently live in the water. They're adult stage. This is it. They don't hatch out into an airborne fly or anything. So they eat all the little bits of detritus. Let's see if I can. There's bound to be some old caddisfly casings. I'll see if I can find some here without getting my feet wet. Let's have a look. Here we go. Bear with me a minute. We've got some various little worm casts and worm casings just there on that rock. Let's see what we can find under the bigger ones. Ah, here we go. Right, so we've got, on this one, we have some freshwater shrimp. That's this guy just here. And there's another little mayfly nymph. Let's see if we can get the camera to focus. Okay, you can just see it creeping along there. There's the freshwater shrimp. But we've also got some of the old casings here from caddisfly species. So they attach themselves during their pupation phase before they hatch out. So these are all from last year. But if you can see, it's like a hollow tube. Well, the light is almost too bright here. You can sort of just see that tube. So the larvae builds itself like a protective casing, and each species kind of builds it in a slightly different way. So some will build them out of twigs, some will build them out of little small fragments of stone, some will sort of put them together from little bits of bark, and they all get stuck together with their own sort of salival glues, and then in their final stage, so they'll crawl around feeding, on the bottom of the stream, and then when it's time to pupate, they'll attach themselves to a rock so they're secure and cover up the end of themselves, pupate into the adult fly, and then hatch out in the water when it's time, and that's usually sort of midsummer-ish breed, and then the cycle starts all over again. They'll go back to water and lay their eggs, and it all begins over again. So a lot of these stream insects, they usually have a 6-month or a 12-month life cycle, generally speaking, and you'll find it's quite a short life cycle, but it again is that's the life source of everything that's here. It's such a good food source for everything. Let's see there's another. Let's get the focus. There's another little case there from last year. A few other little small, like a small young shrimp, I think it is, or is that a? Oh, so even smaller mayfly. There you go. Oh, there's here one on my hand there. If it focuses. I don't think that one's a mayfly. That's a slightly different species. I can't remember which one it is. Has just the 2 forks on the end of its tail. What else do we have? So like I said, we've got various fish. This stream itself would have been a trout and salmon spawning stream, but because it's been cut off from the lock with the sluicing, it no longer gets any of that migratory breeding fish. But we do have, all the various small things that are up here, as you can imagine, little minnows and what they're called, sticklebacks and things like that. And this is where you'll find the herons and the egrets all come and plot themselves here, and especially in the slower pools where the fish will sort of congregate a bit more. Obviously they'll be feeding on them there. And the herons themselves are just starting rebuilding their nests, and they probably have almost got their eggs out by now in the heronry over on Patterson's Hill. So if you're walking the Blue Trail, far southwestern side of the estate, you'll see 4, they look like ramshackled twigs bounced at a very high height up onto the tops of the trees. That's the heron's nest there, and there's 3 pairs on there at the moment, so just keep your noise down. They've got used to everyone there, but there's no need to sort of shout and bawl while you're there, because they can get disturbed sometimes. So and of course the otters come up the stream here. I think it was about May last year, I'd put a camera closer to where the stream sluices out near the temple. We've got the otter coming up the stream, and I know it comes all the way up this stream, right the way up to the far side of the estate, and there's some pools and ponds up the very top end that used to keep commercial fish, and they've gone all the way up there, and they've had a few of those leftovers of the fish before. They'll also, this time of year, as birds are starting to nest, especially like the ground nesting fowl and ducks and things like that, they'll come up and be looking for eggs and young birds to eat as well. So that's the otters. They come all the way up here from the lock. They're doing really well. Certainly a species that's recovered incredibly well on the peninsula. I know there's certainly a good contingent on the inside of the lock, but on the eastern side of the peninsula, around sort of Ballyhalbert, all the way up to Mill Isle, you quite often see them out there on the rocks, especially in the mornings. They tend to snooze through the day, but if you want to see otters, get up early in the morning and have a look at some of the low tide kelp covered rocks on the east coast, and you might just see them. So I talked about leaky dams earlier on. The likes of trees and detritus that falls into the streams over winter, these are really good. Again, it slows the flow, it provides really good shelter for the likes of those insects and larvae that are in there. It also, around the edges of where you get these blockages, the water will speed up a little bit, and so you get these different types of flow, oxygenation of the water there, and of course it creates a whole sort of mixture of habitats. cracking. So yeah, that's why we don't ever take out material from the stream, and if anything, we actually put stuff in at the moment to enhance that sort of habitat. But yeah, I'm not going to wade in there. I haven't got my boots in today, but just on that note of bats, let's see if I can get it to focus just on that dark side in there. You can just about sort of see some of that little dark bit there is like a little hollow up inside the bridge here. That's the sort of places where the bats will tuck themselves away during the day and then come out at night. So this is one of those areas I survey. So I'll pass through there with a red light just to have a quick look in any of the holes, and with the bat detector I'll be in here in the evenings just to see if anything comes out of them. Haven't had anything recorded on this bridge, but we have on other bridges around the estate. Generally speaking, it seems to be an intermittent roost. We don't have a resident population of Dorbenton's bats in this area, but it's not to say that they won't be back as the habitat improves. But we've certainly got a very good population of common pipistrelle. Soprano pipistrelles are doing very well here. There's a 300 plus strong roost on the estate. We've got the Liza's bats in the house, of course, just a few of those. And then the long-eared bats, we have, I think it's 6 roosts around the estate, summer roosts, and 1 maternity roost, so that's one that they breed in. So yeah, Tin and Oak and the Gate Lodges are some of those sites, and yeah, there's a little video from last year of the long-eared spat, and I took you in to do one of the roost counts actually, and you can sort of see them just up on the ceiling, which is quite cool. Yeah, just look at this is a slightly slower bit of the stream here. I just thought I'd have a quick look here, and see those round bits here. So these are a different type of larval casing. I was hoping to see if we could find one of the limpets. I can't quite see it, but I can't quite see this. But is it going to focus? Focus. There we go. Just under there, it's kind of like a little larvae lice just on the underside of it, and they stick themselves to the rocks. I'll have a quick look here. I don't want to hang around here too long, so I'm just move on to the last site. See if I can find one of the limpets. I know that they occur from sort of about here on down, but I'm betting that just with the very flashy winter weather we've had, a lot of them will probably be congregated around the calmer sections just on round. Yeah, if there's time, I'll have a quick look. I went around at the end, so I'm going to just climb out. I've got to point this one out. When you're passing on this bridge here, camera's gone a bit funny. There we go. Just pointing this one out. This beautiful old tree stump here, covered in all the wood sorrel. I absolutely love this little tree stump, and this will all be in flower in a couple of weeks' time. Lovely little white delicate flowers just popping out of this top of this tree stump here, you know, as it decays, with all the lovely mosses and hidey holes in there, surrounded by the greater celandine, which is this leaf here. And they're the yellow ones. Let you see that. I'll show you those in a second. Got to see some bluebells around it as well, and there's a nice little fern, maidenhair fern, that grows out of the stump as well. I love little features like that. But yeah, the celandines are well on their way out. There's a beautiful full flower greater celandine in flower there. Cracking. So let's have a look through. Valerie, good morning. Have you got any wood for the fire? Funnily enough, we actually haven't produced a huge amount of wood stock over the last 12 months because we haven't been able to do a lot of our work, with a lot of our team gone or not able to come in. We've done some stuff. We haven't had too much storm damage, so there hasn't been a huge amount of material produced, but there is some. So yeah, so we do some firewood sales here. Usually it goes out in large pieces. And speaking of that, actually, for anyone who follows me on Twitter, I will have sort of teased you already with a video that I'm getting edited together of getting all the timber, we're talking the big pieces of timber, over to Cardi, over the road there, who makes them into obviously amazing pieces of furniture. So I'm going to be doing this forest to furniture piece, just editing it together, and have a quick chat with Craig over at Cardi Timber, looking at some of the pieces that were made from timber from here that went over there sort of 3 or 4 years ago, and they've now gone through the cutting process, the drying process, and they're there looking absolutely beautiful pieces of wood. So yeah, look forward to that in a couple of weeks. So I'm trying to get it edited together basically for when I am on leave, and on that note, I will be not actually on site next week. I am off lambing with one of our neighbours, helping them out for a week. So next week's Mount Stewart moment will involve sheep and lambs. A quick chat about that. And you know, again, if you follow me on Anti-Ranger Toby on Twitter, then yeah, there'll be lots of sort of sheep talk with the lambing 2021. So the week after that, I think, I'll have that video out about the Forester furniture piece, which would be a nice little bit, moving these, you know, big sort of 3-4 ton pieces of timber and getting them all extracted, which some of the regular walkers will have seen me out and about actually getting that timber moved a few weeks ago. So yeah, what else have we got here? So Valerie also asked, do we get oak egger moths? Not in huge numbers. So the oak egger moth it's like a lowland and upland heath species. Its food plants are usually associated with heathers and bogs, but they do turn up every now and then, because you know there are bogs around the peninsula. I probably get them more on the north coast where I live, coming off the Benevenant Hills, and they come into the traps that I survey those areas up there. But yeah, they're a cracking moth, real woolly, furry, feathery looking moth, brilliant. Sorry, not sure about the beard. Yeah, it's growing a bit long, isn't it? I'm not too sure about it myself either, to be honest. I think it's just pure laziness lately. I haven't done much trimming, but thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, so one of the videos from a few weeks ago was getting these young beef herd bullocks out on the Red Trail parkland to get it grazed. They're pretty much done in the area now. You can see where they've just trampled down and broken down the edges and eaten away some of the rough grass, and especially at the far end over there, they've done a really good job. So they're probably going to be coming off probably towards the end of this week. It's quite dry this week, so we're just going to keep them on a little longer to finish off the rank grasses, and we'll have them off and give the area 2 or 3 weeks rest, and again it'll probably be reopening mid-April, along with the green trail. So the green trail, its main reason we haven't been able to open that just yet is, one, we want to give it as long a rest as possible, but we've also got quite a lot of work to do in Moatwood itself, where the ground, because it is a green surface, we can't use aggregate in that area. We need to realign the current trail to a different area to, one, let the old area rest and move all the brash in, just to sort of, you know, realign the path, and that will take the better part of a week to do a lot of that. But now some of my volunteer team have been allowed to come back in. We can work through that over the coming weeks. Some of them are going to be doing it while I'm on leave, and then we'll get it all consolidated once I am back in early April. So yeah, we can just see the other stream here, some of the other little panels. So this is where we usually tend to see a lot of freshwater limpets from this area down, just slightly slower flowing, a little bit more shelter and vegetation. It doesn't get quite so bright down there, and as the vegetation comes up over the stream here, it just closes it up a little bit. But I thought we'd finish talking about ash. This absolutely beautiful mature ash tree. It's showing signs of decline. So unfortunately its days are numbered, but you can see some of these limbs here are actually dead. There's a bit of dieback in the crown. It's hard to tell yet what it is, whether it's ash dieback starting on the tree or not, or whether it's just because of the last 5 years. Weather patterns have meant, you know, areas that are already kind of quite dry and rocky, and you know, this tree is growing out of a bridge. And the side of the bridge, and you know, quite a sort of rocky area, although it probably gets a fair amount of water where its toes are probably just tucking into the stream there. Yeah, it's certainly been stressed, like a lot of the trees over the last year, but very extended long dry periods. You know, it's taken its toll on a lot of these mature trees, especially if they're already starting to succumb to various sort of funguses in their old age. So I'm hoping that we can retain this tree as long as possible, because again, size just doesn't do it justice. I'll try and get some orientation here. So this little divot, there's my hand, so just back away from that divot. It's a big tree. It's a big tree. That's easily predates the domain, that tree. So it will have been a young little sapling growing on this bridge when it was first built, I would imagine. So we're looking at probably maybe even 250 years old. Beautiful ash tree. It's going to be really sad to see these trees disappear from the landscape over the coming years. But you know, we might find some sort of resistance out there in the woodlands, and that's something that we're always looking for. And is the approach to managing for ash dieback at the moment is where there's a safety issue, it gets removed. But where possible, we're actually sort of letting the disease sort of take its course and hoping that we can identify some resistant trees or resilient trees within landscape, and then they can hopefully be propagated from or recover, with encouraging natural regeneration. So yeah, it's a new year. I kind of feel that this time of year is the new year for me, really. So end of the winter season, we have a real shift in our type of work around this time of year. So we move away from our main woodland and sort of heavier woodland management work, and we now look forward into some of the infrastructure work for access. Our survey and biological monitoring starts, and of course, spring. It's great. So yeah, we don't tend to operate by the calendar year that much. So yeah, and of course, it's been a full year since we started these things. So I hope that was a nice little trip back to the Glen, and a sort of a slightly smoother camera work this time around compared to the very first time we were here. I'll pick up a few more questions if you've got any there. No questions, that's all good. So if you've got any questions, get them in now. But pretty much, I'm going to be heading back over to natural play area over at the Glen. So this is that area. If you're ever up at natural play, look out from that woodland towards the Glen. That would have been the original design vista, looking down to the folly, or the picnicking house. And a side note, which before I get on to a completely other different conversation, where the stone pile is, people will recognise that there's actually a big concrete pad there. That used to be an aircraft hangar, and there was a runway that went, was that way actually, sorry, it went in and out there, because the Stewart Lady Edith could fly a plane, and they had their own plane and hangar here, as you do. So yeah, little random fact here. If you've ever wondered what that concrete pad was there for, yep, it's an aircraft hangar, and the runway pretty much sort of went out that way. Yeah, so if you imagine, this would have all been marshland pre-domain. Obviously it's been walled in and drained since. So yeah, there we go. Thank you for joining us, everybody, and I hope that's been a nice little insight. So we've got the next sort of few weeks planned out, teased you with some of that there. The next live stream is a month's time. It's like the 19th of April or something like that. Let us know where you'd like to go. I'm going to obviously ask, I can't promise it, but I will ask that we can get back to some areas of the gardens with one of the gardens team, perhaps. It's sort of getting to that time of year where a lot of fresh growth and colour is coming into the gardens, and it's a chance for them to talk about some of the things that you might not notice within the garden. So I'll try my best, but we've all got lots of jobs to do. But the more you ask for that sort of thing in the comments, the more likely it will happen. So ask away. So thank you, everybody, and I hope you're all well, and I'll see you out and about on the trails. Do say hello if you see me out and about. I may look like I have a grumpy scowl on my face, but I think that's possibly just a case of sort of resting scowl face sometimes. But I am a nice chap to speak to, unless you have your dog off a lead. Keep them on the leads. So goodbye, everybody, and we'll see you over the coming weeks.